made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This episode is brought to you by Clothes for Chiro, Chiro Sushi, Dr. Barbara Eaton's 56-day chiropractic boot camp, Dr. Alok Trivedi, the Black Diamond Club, Element Mattresses, Legacy Wealth Management, Posture Screen, MedZone, Vantage Point Marketing, Movo University, Vita Chiropractic, the Universal Tractioning System, Imaging Services, Ignite Marketing, and Zingit Solutions. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 51 of Chiro Hustle. I'm your co-host Luke Millette. Here's your host Jim Chester.
Hey guys, so today's episode is Brett Jones. So he's out of Oakland, California at the Source Chiropractic Center. And if you want to learn more about Chiro's training culture and the adjusting ninjas, stay tuned. What's your chiropractic story and what influenced you to become a chiropractor?
My chiropractic story, I would say, begins with going to see my dad's chiropractor. So my dad was involved in a car accident when he was on the highway patrol, and started seeing a chiropractor. And I would go with him every now and then, and I just thought it was cool. There wasn't like any bigness to it. I had myself experienced a few injuries playing football, and I'd went in, and to be honest, like, it didn't really help me. And again, it was just like one of those, like, went there with my dad. He just put me on a table. He cracked me. And then I left and, didn't experience much change. And then like a year and a half later, I had another injury, and I was with my dad, and I got on the table and got cracked. And, but the whole time I didn't get told anything about what chiropractic was, the bigness of its why. But for whatever reason, and I believe universe has a better explanation than my limited educated mind, something kept drawing me to it. I was an athlete. I played football, went on to play football in college at a Division II program in Colorado, and studied exercise science and sports management. And what I found was the more that I discovered about the human body and performance, the more I didn't know. And I knew that I wanted to continue my education in some form, even after finishing undergrad. And after doing some research on different health professions, again, it was chiropractic that was calling me. And I think mainly because I would be able to, use my body. I'd be able to, have my hands on people. Was never the biggest fan of seeing other people's blood or wanting to perform surgery. And there was a few people, both in my friends and in my family, and even myself, that at times that had the ill effects of prescription medication, whether it was through addiction or just through what that life does to you over time. And so I knew the medical route wasn't the route. I knew that I looked into like occupational therapists and physical therapists and some of these other things. And ultimately, I loved that chiropractors had like that portal of entry, so that they didn't really need to be prescribed by another overseeing doctor, that they could see the direct public and could put their hands on people. And as I got into the chiropractic curriculum, and actually even before, is when I really started to discover the bigness and why I was really being called to it.
Yeah, that's a real beautiful story. I think so many people, just like myself, got into chiropractic because of a sports injury. And then I think that it's also a great thing that there's feeder systems out there, like exercise science programs, that can give chiropractors the study of what it means to understand the functionality of the human body. And then when they come into a chiropractic program like you did, you get that much more in-depth training of taking care of people and understanding the pathology of spinal deformity or whatever might be, subluxation. And then you can go on to deliver the best care you can to them without the allopathic method. Something else you touched on in there, that your story was your dad is a chiropractor. I had no idea that you were a second-generation chiropractor.
No, my dad was seeing a chiropractor.
Oh, he was seeing a chiropractor.
Yeah. No, so he went to go see a chiropractor. He wasn't a chiropractor himself.
Okay, so you got the crunch, but not the story.
Right, the crunch and not the why.
So the second part to that question is, what makes you unique in the chiropractic world?
I would say there's a few things. It's an interesting question. And probably a question better answered by other people. Yet I can say what I often hear, and I can say what I tend to feel. Some of the uniqueness is not being feeling limited by what has been done before, and being brave, vulnerable, and courageous enough to explore and also showcase some of the exploration, and being willing to undergo criticism for doing that. I would say from a cultural perspective, the less than 1% of the chiropractic profession is African American. It's actually one of the least diverse healing professions currently in the world. So I do represent an element of diversity from a mind perspective, and just an application, and I guess you would say even theory. I'm more on subluxation is not a local event. It has a local access point, but it's mainly a global distortion. If you start to study biotensegrity and get an understanding of really quantum theory and quantum mechanics and physics, and then integration, I think also is a unique attribute is I deliver osseous, what you could say impulses, which is like those deep adjustments, yet have a tonal understanding and a tonal approach, and even starting to develop more of a tonal application. So, which tonal typically most people will put in that mix: network, BGI, torque release. My mentor is Dr. Marvin Talski. So, even though I've done BGI 1, 2, and 3 with Dr. Sue Brown, and I took a network elective, my primary, I would say, tonal understanding comes from Talski. And so it's pretty unique to see people that are able to blend. And to me, like, that's the emergence of the true artist. The dogmatism that used to exist and still does in a lot of ways is that you need to do one technique and be really good at one technique. Yet chiropractic was not founded on a philosophy, a science, and a technique. It was founded on a philosophy, science, and art. And so the element that was missing for people to be able to integrate multiple forms of expressions was the training element. And I believe that's something that we've really, I don't want to say we began, but we've evolved and continue to evolve with Kairos training culture, is the element of, if you are training chiropractic outside of your office daily, then I imagine you can become as effective at multiple forms of expressions, quote unquote technique, as you want to be. And so I can deliver a solid upper cervical knee chest adjustment, a toggle adjustment, lifts, the full spine work, the tonal work, the bioenergetic, reading the energy off of the body. All of it is possible. It's just some people put more time into other things, and that's all it is. Where you put your time is where you grow. And if you want to be dynamic in how you connect with people, then that's a possibility. And so I would say, one of my biggest things that makes me unique is my dynamic adaptability. And I'm as good of a listener as I am a doer, and I'm becoming a better listener every day, and that's an affirmation. And I think that's another big need of this profession is to really embrace the feminine energy, and that's not talking about parts. And I think that's where people get confused, is that they say, like, for instance, I'm going to have a female on stage, but a lot of times what you're seeing even today is that the females on stage, they're still picking the masculine females, and they're not embracing the feminine nature of both men and women, because we are both energies. And so the more that we learn to embrace that, the better this profession and the better this world will be.
Those are some pretty astute observations, and now that you kind of mention it, I'm kind of thinking back, like, yeah, I guess that is kind of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that's really unique about your clinic from the perspective of a layperson like myself is you have a gigantic fortress for kids to play in the clinic.
Absolutely, man.
I've never
That's been
seen
one of
that.
the biggest blessings, I think. I mean, that space is very unique, and it's been a collaboration of so many different artists and artworks, and just chiropractors that have come and given their energy, and so yeah, there's few places that I've been to that are like the Source, and we have a large, kids playhouse that was crafted from reclaimed Oakland furniture and decorated by some local Oakland artist. And the bigness of that is we want to be able to serve families, and at the very least we never want the excuse that I can't come in because I got my kids or whatever that is. Like, we got a place for them, and so even if they're not getting adjusted, they got a place that's designed for them. And so it's been great, and people even just walking by from the street will often see it and just come in just to look at it because it's unique.
Yeah, if anyone out there's in the Oakland area, go check out Brett's clinic just to at least see this giant kid palace that he has. It's really amazing. And yeah, you're welcome. Now, a moment ago, you just touched on affirmations. Do you have any favorite mantras or affirmations that help you with your commitment as a doctor?
Absolutely, and actually, I just created a new one, which I'll bring up and read to you now. So I've gone through different mantras and meditations. Like, I used to have a pre-adjustment mantra that I went through, but something that I've been integrating now is what I'm calling the infinite wave of healing affirming statement. And the bigness of this is sometimes what we do is we put an intention or an expectation on a certain result that we'd like to see, sometimes even in our affirmations, and even like you say, like in direction of care, meaning that somebody comes in with this and this, and we think, our educated mind thinks that they need this. But ultimately, what this is all about is the evolution of the soul. And we don't know what the soul needs. And to be honest, when the soul is going through different growth periods, it can look a lot of different ways. And sometimes it looks like pain and suffering. And sometimes it looks like challenge and defeat. And sometimes it looks like failure. And that's not on us. And so when you understand, like even the double slit experiment that's in quantum theory, and understand how a particle will still behave as a particle when observed as a particle, yet when given space, it has the potential to break down as a wave and reformat in a particle and actually have a greater potential of expression. So here's this affirming statement. It says, God, thank you for your infinite wave of blessings and healings. You are performing miracles I can't possibly comprehend. I trust that you will continue to provide whatever is necessary for the evolution of the soul. And to me, that statement allows for the bigness of all possibility without attaching to what we consider positive outcome, because the truth is we don't know. We don't know what that person needs at that given time, but we can hold space. We can be facilitators of connection, and hoping that through their connection to their body, their mind, and their spirit, that whatever is needing to be delivered is being delivered.
Yeah, that's pretty spot on, because I know spirituality does a lot for us, developing who we are, how we carry ourselves, how we take care of other people, our worldviews. And I think that, having good spiritual grounding is definitely something that, propels us to either good forces or, could be the other side of the story. But I think that, understanding a good mantra that gets you to start connecting yourself with why you do what you do. And like you said, the bigness of the why. Why is it? Why do you do what you do, man?
You're asking me?
No, I'm just saying, like, that's the big thing that most of us need
Absolutely.
to start finding.
Right.
So by having that mantra and that affirmation, it puts us into a position where we can be like, wow, I can start working on myself a little bit every day, getting down to who I am and why I do what I do.
Absolutely. And that's one of the bigger reasons that people burn out or feel lost, and is they lost their connection of why they got started in the first place. And so the more that you can reconnect to that, reconnect to who you really are, Because believe it or not, we inhabit these physical spaces just for a limited time, but we're an unlimited soul, an infinite soul that continues. And so, yeah, and sometimes it's nice to peel back from the wall so you can see the bigness of what is.
And what I've seen too is chiropractors, typically they become either chiropractic adjusters or they become chiropractic business people. And I find that, they kind of lose themselves sometimes in being a business person and being less of a chiropractor.
Sure, absolutely. So here's the interesting thing. Both are important. I would say, because Kairos training culture is an artistry development program, what I most often see is fellow artists. And the truth is the majority of people that tend to focus in artistry, like you could say, like the adjuster side of things, tend to be weak in business. That's just an observation. And then you could also make the opposite observation that those that focus on business often lack, the skill in artistry. But there's a potential to be awesome at both. And even Sid Williams, you said, you got the business hand and you got the service hand, and they're equally as important. And be in this world and not of this world. And so, again, the same thing like in the realm of spirituality, for how far you go out and for how far you ascend, you also need to root. We have to understand that we are here having a human experience for a reason, and that's to gain more perspective on spirit and the dynamic nature of the universe through various forms of expression, and to receive only as a result of effort. And so here we are, and we have all of these capacities. And it's important to narrow it in. And if we are amazing artists but got no people on the table to serve, what does that mean? And or if we got all the people on the world to serve, but we're not being properly getting return from that, whether that's financially or energetically, then that's also an issue. Because we need to be in a place, I suggest that we're in a space where we can be in our place of service, serving with the highest good in a state of abundance, and yet receiving in a state of abundance. And so that money is just an energetic return and compensation for the love and service that we give out there. And so it's all of it, and you can have all of it. But I think sometimes what happens is we find what we're strong at, and we tend to only nurture what we're strong at, especially when we don't have the accountability of a group, meaning that there's people that are checking on us and checking us for when we're getting out of alignment and for when we're potentially going to one side of the polarity too much. That speaks so much importance to having people in your life that can hold you accountable, that are either your colleagues, usually colleagues and friends and whatnot. And so being some part of some group, some part of collaborative, cooperative space that we can truly continue the self-work and the bigness of self. But if we keep to ourselves and put ourselves on the islands, and we think we're the shit, but we got nobody to compare it to, then we stay closed-minded and we close ourselves off to our true potential. And so the more we can open ourselves up, allow ourselves to be vulnerable, allowing safe spaces where we can fail and showcase our weaknesses as much as we showcase our strengths is just as important as showing highlight reels to the world on social media.
Well, touching back to the first part of that answer, I listen to a lot of Les Brown, and he says, as long as you know your why, the how will always figure itself out.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, and a lot of what you're saying about it's almost developing your own culture when you become a practitioner.
Right.
And like you said, one of the quotes I really like to say people is, the people are following, therefore I shall lead them. And I think that everybody's following something. They just need to follow good leadership. And sometimes the best leader's deep down inside of us, but we don't know how to uncover it. So we have to continuously, like you said, I studied BGI. I did some networking, level 1 in school, an elective, whatever. You're like, I studied the Towski tonal method. And you're like, you have to find the why within you, and then you become, like I feel, the megaphone for a mission. Get you thinking a little bit.
Yeah.
So I know that you're doing some really cool stuff with training, and you're teaching people, and you have a lot of people come through your clinic. And next question is what could you accomplish if more people knew about your cause and what you're doing?
So we started Kairos Training Culture with one main objective, and that is to evolve the art of chiropractic. And the reason our main mission is to evolve the art of chiropractic is we know that when people develop, higher levels of artistry, that we serve the world at a higher level, which allows people to connect to bigger parts of themselves, and ultimately means that consciousness evolves. And now as consciousness evolves and we start to connect to higher levels of ourselves, we do more good. And the reason that we do more good is because we know that we're not separate from, we are part of. And so you don't harm your neighbor when you know you are your neighbor. And that's actually one of the big reasons, if you actually look at the neurons of nirvana, is why they put some of these heavy restrictions on psychedelics back in the 70s, is nobody wanted to go to war when they're on psychedelics, because ultimately psychedelics are mind opening. And so when your mind is opening to the bigness of the universe and that which you are, you don't want to kill somebody because you know that foe that's being painted as your foe or enemy is really your brother, and is not even really your brother, it's you. And so that's our main objective. Our main objective is consciousness evolving and awakening at higher levels, and we have many strategies to put in play for that. And so by more people becoming aware of what we're doing, and if they're vibing with the awakening of consciousness, because that means a better world for our kids to grow up in. And again, I think that's, we get into this, like, it's about subluxation, and it's about all these things, and less people with subluxation. But again, what's the bigness of less people living unsubluxated? If more people are connected to themselves, and then so there's the little self, like the all lower cap self, which is like the individual, the ID, the ego. But there's the big self, and the big self, all capital self, is all. And so if I have big self discovery and awakening and connection, then again, you're talking about, okay, that's a better world that I want to live in, where we're innovating and creating things that are sustainable for this planet, sustainable for forming friendships and communities, and collaborating and enjoying more, and moving away from the things that are killing us and poisoning us every single day. And so, we train, and again, it's like if you want to change the world, you got to start by changing yourself. And that's like one of the bigger mottos within Kairos Training Culture, because the work that we're doing is really chiropractor self-development. So it's less chiropractic training, as far as like, it's less about the technique, it's less about the form, it's more about you and who you are. And I say, how are you going to clear interferences for other people when they're within you? And that's much bigger than just, I have, a distorted spine. That's, I got trauma that I need to work through. I got discipline that I need to gain. I got anger that I need to let go. I got, this depressive and anxiety habits and routines and, cyclic behavior that I need to work through, because ultimately people will only ascend to the level of consciousness that you are facilitating, if that's what you're doing. And so they only get as clear as you are. So you talk about, oh, this person's clear. Well, if they're clear on thermography, that's the one measure you have of this person being quote unquote clear. What's the clarity that you're bringing to an individual for connection to spirit? Because last time I checked, when it becomes, we talk about dark matter or dark energy, where this thing called spirit resides in and really encompasses, there ain't no measure. There's no measurement on that. So how do you judge somebody's clarity, or how do you allow for somebody to step into being more connected, like on the bigness, and it starts with you. And so if you don't have a program or a system or a routine that you're following or attending or going somewhere for this transformation, or letting go of your old shit, or safe places to fail, or safe places to be seen, then you'll stay the same. And the consciousness of the people that you're serving will stay the same. And so I would love to see more people become aware of what we're doing, because I don't think they really know what we're doing. And even you got a glimpse of it. You attended a training session. You only got a glimpse of what we're doing. That's like the elementary shit. The bigness of this, like I said, is it's awakening. And awakening often comes through effort, and which can mean pain. That doesn't necessarily mean suffering, because suffering and pain is different. Suffering is the mental distress you put on yourself from the pain. But you can have pain without the suffering, right? So pain is almost guaranteed, but the suffering is optional. And so we've found ways to allow people opportunities to start to break free of patterns that are no longer serving them, to step into a new way and new perspectives of seeing the world, and developing themselves so that they can better connect with the people on their table, and ultimately better connect to spirit. And by connecting to spirit and being connected, that again, we begin to wake this world up. And that's the bigness.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of really interesting points. I'm sure is going to kind of have people question like what clarity actually is now.
Yep.
You got me thinking a lot now.
Mm-hmm.
So, based on the way everything's going right now, where do you see chiropractic in 20 years?
Personally, I think we all generate from our own mind perspective. Some of us are clearer on that than others. Some of us operate from a state of ego. What I see happening, I can't talk 20 years right now. I can talk 3 to 5 because I feel it. What you're about to see happen is a reemergence of psychedelics in popular culture, primarily in liberal states. There's a new book being released by Michael Pollan about the study of psychedelics. Right now there's some studies being done on MDMA and PTSD, MDMA being related with ecstasy is like the more common name. But what you're going to see, and it's already happening, so if you look at some of the bigger names, especially within the millennial social media, entrepreneur, business type accounts, so that's your Daniel D. Piazza, who's also one of my mentors, your Jared Adams, your Aubrey Marcus. All of those people are starting to experiment more with psychedelics, particularly ayahuasca, DMT, and then some of the other sacred plant medicine ceremonies. And so as they do, and as they lead the way, and as they talk about their experiences, you're going to start to see more of the population start to tap into that. And what you're going to see then is as minds open, you're going to see a revolution in spiritualism, which is interesting because the roots of chiropractic were in spiritualism. And so as that happens, you'll have those that violently reject it and object it. But you're going to have those that step into it and really embrace it. And so there's an opportunity, and there already is. There's always kind of been like these two sides within chiropractic, but there's an opportunity for people to really start to embrace the spiritual roots of chiropractic, to step in. And what I see personally within Kairos is us really bringing the quantum science and the vitalistic principles to today, meaning that our profession is founded on vitalistic principles. Yet if you look at the mass majority of practices, it's a mechanical application and communication, and it's linear. So quantum understandings and vitalism and universal intelligence and spirit are not linear. And so that means that there's got to be a whole new one understanding, but also streams of communication. And then that means also new application. And if you had asked me who currently is way ahead of the curve, is Tulsky. Tulsky, with what he's presenting in Tulsky Tonal as a means of an adjustment being communication of information through touch, and the parameters he set up for what a tonal adjustment is pretty freaking close to a non-linear approach to the spine and to the nerve system. that really embodies what we really are. And more people are going to be awakening to that very soon. It takes one. So if you've never, I mean, you can accomplish, some of the psychedelic experience in breath work. So especially a form called holotropic breath work. And then I created a form of breathing called activated. I call it the activated breathing. That you can get some of the visuals, and you can get kind of the opening up and the loss of just being identified with this physical body, but starting basically the collapse of your particle form into more of a wave-like state, which is the true potential of what we really are. So these forms of expression are available, or through deep meditation, or through extended fast periods. And then, if you look back, that's Jesus and Buddha, both basically 40-day fast. There's also the native rituals like sun dance, which is a 4-day, no food, no water, dancing. I mean, so there's different ways to do it naturally, but you're going to see an explosion in psychedelics. And as you see explosion in psychedelics, that means that practices can shift. And ultimately, if you talk about the awakening of a planet and of consciousness of what we really are, they need to. So I would see that there would be some abandonment of this bone out of place model, X-ray everybody, linear progressions of care, into more of a non-linear approach that encompasses the quantum being.
You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This episode is brought to you by Clothes for Chiro, Chiro Sushi, Dr. Barbara Eaton's 56-day chiropractic boot camp, Dr. Alok Trivedi, the Black Diamond Club, Element Mattresses, Legacy Wealth Management, Posture Screen, MedZone, Vantage Point Marketing, Movo University, Vita Chiropractic, the Universal Tractioning System, Imaging Services, Ignite Marketing, and Zingit Solutions. Let's hustle. Well, that's pretty heavy stuff, man. I never really thought about the realm of chiropractic with a lot of those ideas in it. So, it kind of took the top off my head. But it's good. It's good, man. It's good because, honestly, I like training with my buddy Zach. He's a chiropractor out here in Grand Junction, and he pushes me physical limits. And I like doing the podcast and talking to high cerebral type people because it pushes my mental limits. And talking to high level communicators, it pushes my communication limits. Yep. And absolutely. I think listening to things like you share, it just pushes my my whole vision on chiropractic in another different form. Yeah, that's good. And it wakes me up a little bit because, I think, I know what I know, but I know a certain system. Right. I know chiropractic as the X-ray model. I know chiropractic as the care plan model. I know chiropractic as the insurance model. Yep. But what else is next? Yeah. I mean, there's, like I said, there's not. I mean, there's going to be some things that always stay the same, right? And then there's going to be some things that shift, and that and for me, that's, what's my role? My role both in Kairos and I think in the chiropractic profession and even in my own life is I'm somebody that pushes boundaries, meaning that, what you could call the modern day shaman, because shamans historically were some of the most trusted people, in the tribes, mainly because they were the ones that would ascend to the spiritual dimension, into the fourth dimension, to discover the insights that were needed to bring back to readjust the machine. So you could almost say it's like you readjust the matrix for their community and give them insight of where they're going. However, that travel is not always safe, and still the same today. And so for those that tend to go outside of what mass consciousness is doing, they often I'm gonna say suffer, but they have the pain of rejection. They have the pain of challenge. They have the pain of ridicule. They have the pain of really basically being the one in front. It's like you're cycling, and everybody else that wants to hop in on what's happening can catch the downwind, or not have to face the wind as much as the one in front. So
Yeah, I mean, it's just what it is. But that I've realized very early, you know, and this thing even started as a kid, like that's been my role, you know. And so I show up how universe is calling me to show up, and I'm here to listen to what universe is providing. And as it provides its insights, then I have to be brave, courageous, and vulnerable enough to bring it forth. And in my listening, like I said, start checking out some of these podcasts. Check out the Aubrey Marcus podcast. He just did an interview with Paul Chek where they talk a lot about it. But I mean, that's what these people are talking about. We talk about, you know, the people that are high performers, and the people that are in all these hacks and all, you know, these brain hacks and, you know, biohacks and all that stuff. It's going to start dipping more into the realm of psychedelics, and as it does, you're going to see a reemergence, especially in liberal states that aren't as conservative. And I'm not saying from the governmental perspective, but at the very least from the underground perspective. Government will never want psychedelics to be legal. By the way, if you take a look at, you know, how drugs even get classified based on health, for instance, let's take a look at LSD. LSD is non-addictive, meaning that if you do LSD, the next time you go to do it, it has way less of effect. And the next time you have to give it space. Like you have to give it like at least a couple weeks or to a month until you can actually have the same LSD experience. And then from an actual, you know, physiological perspective, like when you take a look, even look at cannabis, you know, cannabis versus alcohol, like which one is worse for your health? The alcohol has been proven in numerous studies to be way worse for multiple reasons. And it's actually, you know, closing you down instead of opening you up. And so when you look at the way government classifies drugs, often those that either one, you know, can't be patented by pharmaceutical companies for their own benefit, and that which can be self-grown. So for instance, cannabis can be self-grown, right? And so meaning that it can be grown at your house. And it doesn't have to be chemically designed or created. And so even something like CBD, which is has no psychoactive effects, but has only been shown to help decrease inflammation at the very least, became a class 1 drug, which is the same as heroin and cocaine, which makes no fucking sense. And so it makes no fucking sense unless you understand why they're doing it. So the government is going to classify drugs in a way that makes things illegal that often allow for people to know who they really are. Because as minds open and they connect to the bigness of their spiritual nature, that means that they don't follow orders as well. And they don't just keep doing what the mass consciousness has been doing. And so it's a threat. Like I was saying, like you want to go to war for Iraq for oil, and people become more aware of why you're actually doing it, then they probably don't want to go fight for it, and they don't want to kill their brother because they know it's their brother. But with all that said, like I said, there's about to be an explosion. I said like the next 1 to 3 years, you're going to see, and like I said, this nature, this world, this planet, it works in revolutions. And so you're about to see a revolution in spiritualism within chiropractic. I believe that we're one of the ones leading that. You're about to see a revolution within psychedelics. You're about to see a revolution in energy. So we've moved into a mechanistic Newtonian model primarily as a distrust in religion and what our religious officials were doing. And that's pretty greatly outlined in Bruce Lipton's second book, Spontaneous Evolution, and a few others. And so we started to reject these religious spiritual contexts and wanted something that was more physical, and something that could be, you know, studied, as we said, you know, science, but even science is, I think, is misunderstood currently. So we moved into this Newtonian mechanistic linear model, and we're seeing how many flaws that it has. And so there's this new quantum model that is, you know, by any physicist of today, has been accepted and yet not integrated into chiropractic, not integrated into even healthcare really in general, not integrated into the way we live our lives from an understanding. And so we are way behind in the actual physical application in this dimension of quantum understanding. And so we have an option. I you know, and for me, you know, what I would like to help lead and hopefully collaborate on with other people, I do think If anybody can do it, chiropractors can do it. Like, these are our roots. And now let's take the roots that we have and let's provide or adapt and evolve into quantum levels of understanding and apply that to how we take care of people on the table and how we communicate and all of those things, because we have the ability to do that. Whereas medicine, they've dug their hole, for the treatments of disease through chemical formulas and become slave to pharmaceutical companies where, we could say we have regulating boards that we, have created some shackles on us. Yet at the same time, we can overcome that. There's no bigger company never necessarily that's regulating our functions outside of us. We have our state associations, and we have our board, and we have our CCE, and we have all of these things. Yet we can heavily influence those a little bit more than I think medicine can influence pharmaceutical companies, because they're the ones with the big stick.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something really quick. You're blowing my mind so much right now. I'm starting to feel like I'm on something. I feel like Jim might have slipped something in my
truth. When we hear truth, we know truth. And especially if we're approaching it from an open mind. Now, some people are closed down, right? And they hear something and they immediately judge. Now, if you're judging, then you know that you're coming from ego. Ego will seek to judge first. Your soul and spirit will seek to understand first. And so if you're open right now, and I'm laying this down, and the truth is, it is being channeled right now. So this isn't coming from an educated mind. Now, don't get me wrong, I do my research and I know my shit. And at the same time, these flows are from spirit. And so when in a flow, like I just laid down that last, 10 minutes or 8 minutes or whatever it was, that was channeled in forming language that's supposed to serve as an activation of consciousness. And so if you're feeling like you're on something, you're feeling a buzz, and you're feeling like this slight energy lifting and lightness, that's the truth of what you are. So I'm speaking to your spiritual nature of who you really are. And the truth is, we are all of that. And so when that starts to resonate, you feel it.
I felt that when you were talking to the group there, when you're doing the morning training session, I felt like everybody was like in a flow state. I feel like everybody was in like a deeper level of consciousness. I felt like, after you did the little run with people, they kind of, like you said, they felt a little uncomfortable because of, pushing themselves at that early in the morning, but it's not a painful pain, it's a learning pain. And
Absolutely.
it's not to make somebody feel bad about themselves, it's to fortify them into a stronger person.
Right. So you have to first disintegrate before you can integrate. Right? And so we're all walking around. I'm not going to say we all. There's a majority of people walking around in a very solidified particle form that does not allow for adaptation. And the universe is constantly adapting and is dynamic and integrating. And so if you're walking out in a very hardened, closed down form of yourself, that means that you're not in alignment with spirit and with nature. Right? And so in order to soften that hard particle form, there needs to be some form of disintegration, which can come from physical movement. So like I said, there's a reason to the madness of what we've created in Kairos training culture. There's a reason that we start and we bust our ass outside before we come back in the room to meditate. We're not just tiring the mind, we're helping disintegrate particle form. And by disintegrating particle form, you can become more wave-like, and wave-like is where the true potential is, which you could say is where the infinite is. And so as we connect with the infinite, then we get insight on how to integrate strategy into our life that our educated mind would have never been able to comprehend.
Man, that's well said. And it's nice to listen to somebody that talks on different levels than what I do, because I feel like half the time I'm blowing people's minds and I'm just telling them how to like tap into themselves and start thinking better.
Right.
I'm trying to tap into people and make them think about how that they can make an impact on other people, being nice to them.
Right.
I'm still rudimentary on how I communicate like the human potential movement to like the common person. And,
Sure.
Most people...
But it's necessary, Jim. So here's the bigness. That everybody, doesn't matter who you are, has something to teach somebody. And the way that I'm communicating right now in this moment with this level of consciousness and this level of understanding is going to resonate with certain people. And it doesn't make it wrong or right of who it resonates with and who it doesn't. But I know that I have something to teach somebody for those that are open and willing to hear it. And the same thing with you. And that everybody, no matter what age you are or where you're at in the game, that you have something to offer. And so you just telling people how they might be able to be happier with themselves by connecting with themselves, and whatever that means to you in this moment could be exactly what that person needed to hear. And it's like the most profound thing that they've ever heard. And then, like, for me, I have these, conversations with people almost every day where I'm just like blown away, even the understanding the difference between pain and suffering. I mean, that just really came in last week by talking with Tolsky, so it's like, or at least another layer on it. So these things are constantly being dropped in. It's like, and, something that's simple for one person can be absolutely profound and mind blowing for another. And, it all is. It all is.
Well, you're gonna put me on a different channel on my morning run. I do a hike run in the morning on this mountain. It's called Serpent's Trail, and I like to run up like 6 or 7 times, and then I like to run all the way down. And it's painful, man. It's tough work. But what I'm thinking of doing now is revamping how I do it. I'm probably going to run up for like 20 minutes of the run and break, and then meditate and do some stretching, and then finish the run up to the top of it, and then get to the top and then run all the way down again. So I'm looking at my own training culture based on the particles within me and how I can disintegrate them and blow myself up quick and put myself through that cycle, but then also get functional.
Absolutely. Beautiful.
Yeah, man, I love it. I'm going to go off script a little bit since we have such a good flow here, and I'm going to ask...
I got about 5 more minutes, Jim.
Oh, boy. Okay. Well, I don't think you can answer this in 5 minutes, but I was going to ask you what was the most, I guess, in the past 10 years, what's been the most innovative thing in chiropractic? And I know you might not be able to answer that.
The most innovative thing that I've been exposed to, I honestly have to say it's Tolsky. I mean, Tolsky is my current greatest resource for spiritual enlightenment and for tonal and quantum understanding. And so I just think he's such an inspiration for being 54 years in practice and still evolving. And so I think it's fairly common that we get into practice, and once we feel competent, that we do the bare minimum. Right, so we start to feel competent in our adjusting. We start to feel competent in our practice, and so we just get our CE credits, and that's it. Tolsky, created torque release, and a lot of people don't even know that. Jay Holder created the instrument, and approached Tolsky and said, "I need a technique for this instrument." So Tolsky created the whole technique for torque release. Now it's continued on as Tolsky tonal, mainly because he wanted to continue to evolve the work. And so I've taken I took a seminar with him this year. I took a seminar with him last year, and he already added new things because he kept evolving. And so it's just like, I think when it comes to innovation, somebody that has just continually evolved for 54 years, I mean, that's pretty phenomenal.
So before we all jump off the line here, just really quickly, could you rattle off a couple of books that you're in the middle of reading right now?
Yeah, currently I'm reading The Lakota Way and The Lakota Ritual of Sweat Lodge, because I built a prayer chamber in my backyard, and I'm looking to integrate some traditional, what you call it, a nipi ceremony, which is a sweat ceremony. So I'm reading those ones, getting more insight. Joseph Rial, Being in Vibration, is another one that's adding to that. Kenneth Meadows has a book called The Medicine Way. So I've been really into learning more about the medicine wheel and just native spirituality. So more of our Native American indigenous spirituality. A book that I'm excited to get into is called My Big Toe, which is a collection of works by Thomas Campbell, who is one of the lead researchers and, you could say, insights on consciousness and also quantum understanding. And that came from a recommendation from a Life University student who follows a lot of time. Thomas Campbell took one of our camps and was like, "Yo, you got to check this guy out." So once I get through some of my research for being able to facilitate some sweat ceremonies, then I'm probably going to get into that. But yeah, I'm definitely a big reader. I was big into the New Thought movement. Just about a month and a half ago, I was reading a bunch of books. I was reading a book by I think it's James Wilker Atkinson, who is also known as Yogi Ramacharaka, who was one of the main people that came out. Which, if you actually look at a lot of his books, you'll see B.J. Palmer, I believe, was really inspired by his work, because this is like early 1900s, late 1800s, and then P.P. Quigley, who's basically contributed with the whole New Thought movement. But basically, if you ever read any self-help book, it's inspired by P.P. Quigley, who created the New Thought movement, who basically was the first one to start talking about, what like movies like The Secret came from, and like What the Bleep Do We Know, and even Think and Grow Rich, and all of those were inspired from P.P. Quigley. And P.P. Quigley was a healer that believed that it was basically a false idea is what was causing the majority of people's stuff. And he was a clairvoyant and a clairaudient and had intuition. And so he would sit with people, he'd receive insight, and he'd find ways to clear the false idea. And like I said, there's a revolution happening in that work right now. And so what we're seeing is that the bigger stages of what we do with Kairos, and I think at least what Kairos is moving towards, is how to train intuition and train instinct in, so that you can start to develop what some would call psychic abilities. But I just think they're normal abilities that we just haven't trained because we haven't had to. And so, when we don't exist in nature and we let technology do everything for us, we start to lose what it means to be human. And so then we see other people being human and we judge them, which is so silly to me. We all have these amazing capacities that we're born with, and that if we're part of this universal intelligence, then we are that. And so if that intelligence has the ability to do a lot of things, I imagine so do we. And so just tapping back into what we're really capable of, and doing it through training and through effort. It's a beautiful thing when we connect to the bigness of who we are.
That's all fantastic stuff. So as we wrap this episode up, do you have a couple website links you could share with people so they could find out more about you and your clinic?
Yeah, absolutely. So my office is The Source Chiropractic. It's in Oakland, California. And so it's just thesourcechiropractic.com. We have Kairos Training Culture, which is, like I said, it's a chiropractor self-development training. And so for those of you that are looking to get outside your comfort zone, to be in a space where it's safe to fail and to notice your weaknesses and really just develop yourself in all ways, can't recommend it enough. KairosTrainingCulture.com. You can get online modules, and also we teach camps. And so it used to be under the title Adjusting Ninjas, and that's still actually where the camps are located. So if you want information on the camps, you go to adjustingninjas.com, and you can find our upcoming training camps. And then for a little bit more about me, there's also drbrettjones.com. And so those are a few resources. We also have a podcast called the Artful Chiropractor Podcast that's hosted by Ray Daniels. And so if you're wanting more insight and information in the realm of artistry and self-development, that's another great resource.
All right, Dr. Brett, I wanted to be the first one to personally thank you for being our guest today.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me, Luke.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah, and I just really enjoyed the opportunity to expand the conversation with you and to share your message to our audience. And I look forward to getting to know you on a more friendship, personal level as our careers intertwine with each other.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and thank you for being open to the conversation.
Anytime. And we want you to enjoy the rest of your day, all right?
All right, you too, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Doc. Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.